Welcome back to the Stream of Bhakti channel, where we're continuing our journey into the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a really cool book on the philosophy of Bhakti Yoga, which is amazing. It's an amazing philosophy, and every chapter is different. Right now, we're looking at we're picking up where we left off last time, looking at Parikshit in the womb of his mother. And it's interesting, just that, isn't it, Riyad? Just to like, how many books can you pick up and read about that? You know, other than like say a medical thing, like
Medical journal.
yeah, like I took a course that was on it was in child development. It was a psychology course, and so they've got this whole thing about like the organism, you know, how the organism starts, and you know, the stages of development. But there's nothing about the conscious experience of that living entity within the womb. I don't think you can go anywhere to get like that kind of a read, you know?
Well, it's about the conscious experience of a living entity in the womb. Yeah, I've never read that anywhere
Yeah.
else.
Because, you know,
I
like,
mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe there is some idea that there's some consciousness in the womb. Like, the baby's kicking and like sometimes it might seem like there's some awareness of that there's stuff going on,
yeah,
but not to the extent that the Bhagavatam's talking about.
yeah. And then there's debate, of course, about when consciousness, when the person is a person in there, right? That's a whole debate in the
Right.
Western world anyway. Like, when is life
Right.
legitimate or not, I guess, within the womb, or is it even in the womb, or like, you know, when it comes out of the womb. So
Right. Right.
I mean, like some people think that it's just, you know, considered a living entity or a human being once birth takes place, and others think that it's at some other stage of development. But there's no way that anyone's been able to pin it down according to Western science, you could say, in an agreeable way. Like, not that there's a consensus about that. And but here the Bhagavatam says, like, right from the get-go. Well, we actually, this isn't really describing from the get-go yet. This is just a moment in the womb with Parikshit in there. But later on, the whole process will be described, and the conscious experience, the conscious presence, and then the conscious experience of the soul in the womb. Kind of fascinating.
Yeah. Stuff you won't read anywhere else.
Yeah. Text 11. Okay, so last time what we were talking about was that uh we got this child in the womb, Uttara's womb, and Uttara was she was a princess who was the wife of Arjuna's son, right? Yeah, Abhimanyu. I think it was his
Yes.
wife,
Yeah.
yeah. And so after the battle of Kurukshetra, there were no heirs left. There was no, like, no one survived that in order to continue the dynasty or the royal order of that time. And the only uh, person left was the child in Uttara's womb, who was, you know, destined to be born and to take up the kingship after the battle of Kurukshetra and after the Pandavas left the world. And so uh, Ashvatthama, who we read many chapters ago, you know, wanted to end the dynasty. So he sent this mystical weapon, the Brahmastra, towards the womb of Uttara, and with the intent of killing the child in the womb of the mother. And so she sensed that something was approaching. I don't know if we got to that part. I think we read that already. And she approached Krishna for help. She could sense that there was some danger to her and the child in her womb. And Krishna manifested himself within the womb as well. See, this is something we read last time. It's not that Krishna is not there. Krishna is in the heart of everyone at all times, and Krishna is everywhere at all times, and can reveal his presence or not. And so he revealed his presence to Parikshit in the womb. So somehow in the womb, Parikshit was able to witness or see the super soul. Krishna manifested his form. That's where we're at now.
Yeah.
Was that a
Yeah,
good
we were
summary?
talking about the, yeah, just it was the Bhagavatam was talking about how the Krishna, the absolute, is all pervading.
Yeah.
So it's describing that in some detail. Just we were mentioning about the consciousness of the child in the womb.
Yeah.
There's in the text 10, which was the previous text, Parikshit, who is in the womb, the child in the womb, he
Yeah.
saw this person protecting him. And it says here he thought about who he was.
Yeah.
So there's yeah, it's described, third canto is described that there's actually quite a bit of consciousness going on before birth. And then
Yeah.
when birth happens, it's like a traumatic experience. It's like, ah, like
Yeah.
this, like,
Yeah.
and the child forgets everything. And then, yeah, we just had uh, there was a child born in Sharanagati. There's one family up here that is like half of our community because they
Yeah.
just and there was another baby born.
Like right at Sharanagati?
Yeah. No, they went to Kamloops. They were close to the hospital. They didn't go to the hospital, but
Mm-hmm.
it was her first child, so
Mm-hmm.
they were close to the hospital. But no, there's been quite a few in the yeah her sister. She had quite a few of her children here in the valley.
That's
Anyway,
not so common these days. Yeah.
yeah,
So all right. Uh yeah, he wondered about who he was, and that was one of the reasons why he got the name Parikshit. I can't remember the exact meaning of it, but it's that there was something of that memory that he
right.
carried with him.
And
Um,
right. And Prickett means something like inquisitive, like he was always like it mentioned there that he thought about who he was, and he was
mhm.
always thinking, who was that person as he
Yeah,
was going through life. Yeah.
yeah, and he
Sorry,
was always kind of
I was just mentioning about the child because we saw the baby on and and like there's quite a bit of consciousness in the womb that the Bhagavatam describes. That when the baby comes out, it's like becomes overwhelmed by everything.
yeah.
And we saw this baby, and it's just like, like a pretty overwhelming experience, just
Yeah,
like, oh my gosh, what's going on?
yeah. Most babies look a little bit like they've gone through something, to takes them a
Yeah,
while to
come
yeah.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, text 11. While thus being observed by the child, Krishna, the super soul, Krishna as the super soul here of everyone and the protector of the righteous who stretches in all directions and who is unlimited by time and space, disappeared at once. So in the commentary, Prabhupada says, Child Parikshit was not observing a living being who is limited by time and space. There's a gulf of difference between Krishna and the individual living being. Krishna is mentioned herein as the supreme living being, unlimited by time and space. Every living being is limited by time and space. Even though a living being is qualitatively one with Krishna, quantitatively, there is a great difference between the supreme soul and the common individual soul. In the Bhagavad Gita, both the living beings and the supreme being are said to be all pervading. Yet there is a difference between these two kinds of all pervasiveness. A common living being or soul can be all pervading within his own limited body, but the supreme living being is all pervading in all space and all time. A common living being cannot extend its influence over another common living being by its all pervasiveness, but the supreme supersoul, Krishna, is unlimitedly able to exert his influence over all places and all times and over all living beings. So there's only the thing here that's different, about what's being presented in terms of like a common understanding of spirituality for those who are interested in spirituality. Here there it's referring to this all pervasive presence, right?
Right. Right.
And so that's not such a stretch for people who are like interested in spiritual realization. It's kind of like this
Right.
understanding that there is an all pervasive something that is part of the reality that we're living in, but maybe we're just not aware of it, or we want to become aware of it.
Like everything is, definitely that idea is there that everything's connected, and there's something connecting everything. And
Yeah.
like even if you go and people that are work with nature or study nature, or they come to kind of see that, whoa, everything's like really connected here, like everything is affecting everything else. And so there's this like idea of complete, like interconnectedness.
Yeah. And then like someone might take it a step further and think of this, whatever this force might be, as benevolent.
Right, right,
Like, you just have to tap into that and you'll see life will be okay. Things will work out because it's like the natural situation of what we are, to just be in tune with the spiritual essence in
right.
life. And if we just, you know, tune into that and we're aware of it, then so there's this beneficial aspect of connecting to it. Like it's not seen as a negative thing, right?
Right, right.
In any sense. But this takes it to another level.
Yeah, yeah.
And this seems to be the stretch, right? The stretch is that not only is there this all pervasive, benevolent, like state or energy or whatever influence reality, but it's based on or coming from a personality. There's a personality behind it. Now that's the stretch, right?
Right, right. Although in one sense, I mean, what's being described here, I'm just thinking about it. It's the comparison's interesting because like, we are we have an awareness, right? And our awareness extends so far. So like, usually within our, like what's being mentioned here, within our own body, we're aware, like I'm aware what's going on at like the end of my fingertips, and that, at the end of it. So the awareness, it extends, so far. And even like, I mean, I'm not, my awareness may extend to other things also. Like I'm aware of like what's going on in my environment, by sound, or so I have, my awareness can even extend beyond my body to some extent, right? But what's just being described here is that Krishna, his awareness extends even farther, and his awareness actually extends unlimitedly. So we have a limited, our the individual living being, it has a limited extent, and Krishna's is unlimited. Now I think it's hard because it's like when we read about Krishna, it's like here's a person, right? And we're people, but so it's like why would his experience be any different than our experience? because he's a person, we're a person, like we're just reading about another person here, but that's the whole philosophy of bhakti, is that there's the absolute, that person is different than all other living beings. And these are there's a lot of, in this commentary here, a lot of the differences that are being pointed out.
Yeah, I like this point. One of the basis of bhakti is that there is a okay, so there is personality. It has a spiritual basis. Like personality is a spiritual
Right, right.
is a spiritual, what would you call it? Uh Feature.
Spiritual reality.
Yeah. Then the like personality itself is
Right,
not an illusion.
right, right. Or it's not a product of material combination, like at a certain point of chemical combination, then personality
Yeah,
manifests.
that's right. Yeah. And so because it is and so there's this one sentence here that will come up repeatedly. Where was that sentence? Even though a living being is qualitatively one with Krishna, qualitatively means having the same qualities.
Right,
Quantitatively, there is a great difference. So in terms of quantity, so that personality and that awareness, in that sense, we're the same. Like, we're not different from Krishna in the sense that we have personalities and we have awareness,
right.
and we have the same kind of we have that same quality just like Krishna does, but the difference is in the quantity.
Quantity. Right,
Krishna is the origin of that um personality. It's interesting to think of, like, because when we think of Krishna as the origin, it's like everything emanates from Krishna. And so when we think of something emanating from something, maybe we'll think of like a light bulb, like this light bulb here. There's light emanating from it.
right,
But it's harder to wrap our mind around how personality emanates
right, right.
from Krishna. But the fact is that we spiritual beings we're spiritual energy. Like our the soul aspect, the spiritual aspect of us is that we are energy, but that energy isn't just like featureless.
Right, right, right.
The energy, like the light that's coming from this light bulb over here, the light itself, it only has one feature, right? It's giving light, or it's like,
And maybe a little bit of heat.
yeah, maybe a little bit of heat. So, but the kind of energies that come from Krishna are multifaceted. They
Right.
have many,
Yeah.
many features,
Yeah. Right. Right.
and one of them is personality.
Right.
And so we, as divine energies, one of the constituents of that energy is personality. And that's where bhakti is like kind of like standalone in terms of spiritual philosophy, and amongst, well, at least to the, yeah, I think so. Would you say so? Would you agree with that?
Well, there's definitely, like, when it comes to spiritual discussions
Yeah.
on spiritual philosophy, there's kind of like two ideas there that, like, we're talking about. There's this kind of like all pervasive energy, but it's a oneness. It doesn't have like a variety in it. And then there's another school of philosophy, which is what the Bhagavatam is speaking about, is that there's a spiritual reality, but there's lots of variety in it. There's
Mm-hmm.
unlimited variety in it.
Yeah. And so like the world that we live in now is kind of like it's like a covering of the variety.
Yeah.
The reason why there's variety in the material world is because the matter is covering all of the spiritual variety.
Right.
And and so the world is actually filled with spiritual variety, but we don't perceive it because it's covered with matter. And like our bodies, for example, we're covered with matter, like the soul resides within the body, animates the body, energizes the body. And but I don't see your soul. I see your personality, though.
Right.
But I don't. I'm seeing it as it's expressed through your material body.
Right.
In
Right.
the background, I see a bunch of trees there, and those trees have life in it. And but that's the soul that's in that tree.
You
The
see the
life.
trees?
I can. Well, I know it's a tree because I don't know. I, I'm assuming it's a tree. There's a green thing over there, but there's life in there, and it's covered by this form of a tree. And I mean, it's kind of cool to conceive of the world in this way, right? It's like there's life in every inch
Right. Right.
of the world that we live in, but it's kind of covered with a material energy, and we're seeing that expression of life through matter.
Yeah.
But a spiritual, someone who's enlightened, can understand that underneath that covering of matter, there's there's a spiritual being in there, spiritual energy, and that spiritual energy has uh, uh,
So
ver-
a personal feature.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know. I'm just my mind is kind of going back to this point, but it's interesting how like Krishna is a person, like we're a person, but he's just like he's got different characteristics than we do. Like he's
Yes.
different and different not in the sense of like what we're talking about awareness, personality, um, he has how he experiences life, but he's all of those things for him are unlimited, whereas for us it's all a limited so it's I know in one place there's like generally when we think of things we think of it based on our own conception or our own experience. So when we hear about a person that has unlimited awareness, like is conscious of all times, places, it's like, oh, that can't exist, like I don't experience that. So our sometimes our understanding gets limited by our own, like experience of things. But we're talking, yeah, anyway, Krishna, talking about Krishna and how he's an unlimited, he's a person like us, but his, unlimited uh, uh, ability and awareness and potency and
Yeah. And so what happens here is that because we're only hearing, we're hearing bits at a time, right? We're
yeah.
starting to hear a little bit, and we not only hear about Krishna in the Bhagavatam, but we're also going to hear about those who are trying to meet him
Yeah.
in different ways, right?
Yeah, and that's I mean that is what the Bhagavatam is about, isn't it? It's about Krishna describing who this person is, right?
Yeah, yeah, the whole thing, right?
The whole thing. Yeah, and it's obviously it's a big subject matter because uh, uh, it takes quite a while to describe.
And and as we hear, it's the same thing. Like as we hear about somebody, we meet somebody, right? And we become attracted to get to know them more. They have
Mhm.
something very interesting about their personality. And it's like famous people, for example, people want to be close to them. They want to somehow, you know, somehow, if possible, even meet them,
Right,
Um,
right.
but how does that desire arise to meet some famous person? Well, that famous person does something really far out, or it has some special gift or has some qualities that make them famous. And then, we want to read about them, we want to hear about them, and we want to be in their presence. And that's a phenomena that takes place just with normal people in this world.
Right, right.
So the Bhagavatam is um, doing the same thing. It's helping us understand the most famous, you
Right.
know,
Unlimited, that's one of his aspects, right?
yeah,
Unlimitedly,
yeah.
unlimitedly famous.
and there's nobody that stirs up more curiosity and discussion
Right.
than Krishna.
Yeah,
Like
right.
there's so many different kinds of religions and spiritual paths and form of types of yoga, and um like they're all somehow trying to approach an understanding of who this personality is, and
Right.
what the different features are. Some only become attracted to certain aspects of his personality,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
some become attracted to the whole.
Yeah, and I was thinking that when whatever one's concept, like whatever our concept might be of spirituality, like whatever it is, that's included in Krishna.
Yeah.
So however, far our our ideas or our understanding of spirituality, like it's an aspect of Krishna. But there's, the Bhagavatam goes into quite lengthy detail about all of the different aspects of Krishna. So
Yeah. And it's really exciting once some of that attraction towards Krishna's personality starts to develop, because it's like exciting to be like know to like to be in the presence of someone, that to be attracted, and to kind of like know that we can approach this person, and have this person's association. Like it happens. I don't know why these examples are coming in my mind, but like, I'm on the Sky Train a lot here,
uh-huh, uh-huh.
because I'm going back and forth from college or whatever, and whenever there's a game on, like when the Vancouver Canucks are playing,
Okay, okay.
I happen to be coming home often, around the time when people are heading out to the game,
Oh,
and
okay.
and you see like people are they put on the jersey of the person that they're most kind of inspired by, and they're
Right,
excited, they're going to go and see the people they want to see do
right,
what they do what they're doing. They're just so attracted to go there, and it's actually quite enlivening and fun for them to do this, right?
right,
and
right.
and and, and also like, so in one of my classes, somebody sent this text to everyone in the class saying, "Oh, I got these tickets for some. One of my friends is selling tickets for there's some show going on in Vancouver. Hard to get tickets for." And she's like, "Well, I've got, they're not going to go. They suddenly have two tickets. Anybody want them?" And it's like they want to go, and so someone's going to buy these tickets, and they're going to go and spend like $250, and be just so that they can go and be close to this person and hear what they're going to do, see what the activities they're going to do. So my point is that it's quite natural for us
Right,
to be
right,
attracted to other people.
right, right,
And so as we get to know Krishna, it becomes more attractive. This person is so amazing.
right,
But the Bhagavatam isn't really just reading a book. It's like we're actually getting closer and closer to the person that's
right, right,
behind all of this. And it's really becomes an exciting thing as we get deeper into it.
right. Nice. That's nice.
That was a bit of a tangent. Hey, Akala, would you mind turning off your mic? Thanks for being there, by the way. So, do you want to go on to the next text?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so 12. Thereupon, when all the good signs of the zodiac gradually evolved, the heir apparent of Pandu, who would be exactly like him in prowess, took birth. Just looking at
Okay.
the zodiac here.
Yeah, yeah, we can read some of
Oh,
this. The
the word for word says constellation of stellar influence.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Stellar has a little also a little different definition in the modern English language.
Stellar meaning like, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. It's both though for him.
It's
It's
both.
stellar
Yeah.
and it's stellar.
Yeah.
It's stellar because the astrology is involved, but it's also awesome. The influence.
Okay.
But just before we get into the purport, now what's happening, and this is a feature. This is like, so we just spent a bunch of time talking about Krishna's personality, right? So the Bhagavatam doesn't only tell us about Krishna's personality, also tells us about the personalities of those who are close to Krishna.
Right. Who
This
has,
is
yeah, who are like Krishna's friends or like Krishna's servants or have some personal relationship actually, like, yeah, yeah.
and the same in one sense the same function is there. I don't know if function is the right word, but the same effect is there. That not only are we becoming attracted to Krishna, but we're becoming attracted to these like amazing personalities
Right.
that are close to him. And so if Parikit is so awesome, if he's so stellar, and we'll find out more about his stellar personality, he's attracted to Krishna.
Right. Right.
And that's something that happens throughout the Bhagavatam. We're going to talk about great yogis who go through these, like they're high achievers in yoga, right? And they go through all kinds of really far out mystical experiences sometimes, and they are attracted to Krishna. And then
Right.
we read about different people in all kinds of different life circumstances and how they find Krishna in those circumstances. It's just amazing. Do you want to get into the stellar part here?
Okay. So commentary. Astronomical calculations of stellar influences upon a living being are not suppositions, but are factual as confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam. Every living being is controlled by the laws of nature at every minute, just as a citizen is controlled by the influence of the state. The state laws are grossly observed, but the laws of material nature, being subtle to our gross understanding, cannot be experienced grossly. Just meaning that, like the state laws, it's like you can like observe, what's going on with your physical vision, whereas the influence of astrological influences are not perceivable by the physical vision, but
Exactly.
they're still experienced by
Yeah,
the
like
living entity.
when I get in a car and I drive out of the driveway, I have to drive on the right-hand side of the road. Then I get to a stop sign and I have to stop at the stop sign. And then I go to a street light and there's a street light that tells me if I can go or stop. I have to put my blinker on. This is all gross, right?
Right, right,
Like it's like it's all right there in front of my face. And there it's there because there's laws that make all this happen. But the laws of nature, they're happening anyway, even though
we perceive them or we don't.
exactly.
I was just reading something about, yeah, gravity. You don't see gravity. You see the effects of gravity,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't see gravity. And yeah, but it's something that we're all subjected to.
Prabhupada says in
Um,
that first sentence that the astronomical calculations, he's talking about astrology, is
mhm.
not a supposition, meaning
Yeah,
it's
what
not
is
like I think what supposition means is
not
that
not like an imagination or
yeah, I suppose it could be like that, It's not like that. It's
oh, I
tangible.
see.
Yeah, it's
I see.
factual.
I see. It might be like this, it might be like that, but it's
Yeah.
it's it's actually a particular way.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Okay, look,
Uh,
I'm not going to go on too much of a tangent with this, but I just happened last night.
uh-huh.
I was um going through some stuff like in my computer. Sometimes like I was looking for something and I came across my astrological stuff because I know a very good astrologer and so she gave me like a lot of help actually in life by um, helping me understand certain things about my life and whatnot. And so I came across my astrological reading and I sat down and read it. And I was just like, my jaw was just like, like on the floor. Like, yeah, I hadn't read it in a long time. And I'm like, it's so accurate. and very subtle things about my personality. And this is somebody who I don't know personally. Like she lives in India and has no way to
Right, right,
know has
right.
no way to know subtle features of my personality. And so it's just really interesting to experience that. Astrology is something that has a lot of substance to it.
I'm just thinking it's a very like the type of knowledge that the Bhagavatam is presenting. It's very different than our current kind of scientific method because we're trying to figure things out.
Mm-hmm.
So like I can't remember who I was just reading this recently, but somebody had the first idea of gravity, how it might work. And then Newton came along and then he had his, idea of how it works. And I think that's the current kind of model. But we from the scientific method, we're trying to like kind of like figure out how things work, and then as we get new information we update how things work. And it's like it kind of works. It might be some of the picture, but it never encapsulates necessarily all of the different aspects. But when we deal with like the Bhagavatam, the type of knowledge, the knowledge is I mean, it's presented as like this is how things are, and that the knowledge has come from a higher source. Ultimately, the knowledge has come from Krishna, from the and as we were talking about the supreme intelligence, the person who is actually aware of how everything works exactly. So this knowledge is coming from that person, and so the knowledge is actually, I mean, they say the Vedic knowledge is perfect in the sense that like this is how it is. And it's so like when we're talking about astrology here and how it's like there's a science to it. And it's like if this is how it is and these things mean this and this. So if like the star is in this place when you're born, then there's going to be this influence on your personality or on your life in some way. And it's just like it's knowledge, but it's coming from a different you know perspective. It's like this is the reality, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to like what is the reality, and like figuring out the reality, and which people like doing.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the Bhagavatam, it's like don't spend your life studying like how a piece of grass grows. Like there's a purpose to life, and you got to utilize your life for that purpose. So if you
Mm-hmm.
if you get too caught up in some of the other things, then you miss what the purpose of life is meant for.
Yeah, yeah. In either case, if I accept, I guess like Prabhupada refers to it as the ascending or descending
Right, right.
knowledge, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So our scientific knowledge, is an ascending process. We're kind of building on it, always
Yeah,
building on it.
starting from nothing and
Yeah.
building up. Yeah.
And then the descending process is that it's knowledge coming from a source, a perfect
Bas-
source that's describing things as they are.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
so we just kind of like knowledge is given to us instead of us having to figure it out. Now, in either case, I can accept the ascending or the descending, but my position doesn't really change. I still have to apply it and figure it out.
Right. Right.
So, like, it's not just because the Bhagavatam is going to tell me this is how it is, then I'm like, oh, now I get it. This is how it is. It's like, no, I have to take the information and apply it to life and see if that's how it is. And it's the same in if I'm taking the ascending path, that I'm
Right.
given
Right.
information and I have to apply that information to my life and see what it does.
Right. Right.
So in either case,
In
now,
that sense, both are scientific
yes, yeah.
in that sense.
And so I think the Bhagavatam, in one sense, is, you could say a history of especially when we get into the lives of these different personalities, like now Prickett, of people who are applying the descending process
Right.
and just seeing what result they get. We know the result we get from the ascending process, because that's what we live in. We live in
Right.
a
Right.
world
Right.
that's really constructed by like our view of the world, and so
I'm happy you brought that up, the ascending and descending.
yeah.
Um, the descending process, I would also throw in the word there that this is knowledge coming from authority. So like you have, I think Prabhupada, he'd give the example of a TV guide, which I don't know if they exist anymore.
TV
but
guide, right?
but they used to send out those, you
Yeah,
get it in the mail, and like
yeah,
it'd show like this is what's going to be on which channel at what time.
yeah,
But so that's knowledge from authority, right?
yeah. Hmm. Well,
Because
okay, I'm going to go.
are you gonna update my example?
No, I'm going to no, yeah, no, yeah. I, I wonder if anybody has ever
Seen a
even know.
TV
I'm
guide?
surprised that you know what a TV guide is actually.
Yeah.
Anyway, so no, I'm going to frame it like this: that I'm going to say that both are authoritative, in the sense that it's not that there is nothing gained from the ascending. Like, there's the world can science, for example, does offer results, and it
Right,
does
right.
offer like an understanding of the world, and it's very tangible, and we're using it right now actually just on the Zoom, using Zoom, right? Like so like there's power there, and so there's a kind of authority there, because it's like, here's some knowledge and here's what it can do. It loses its authority when it talks about things it can't do, and
Right,
can't
right.
it can't describe, and tries to when it can't. Okay, so in that case it loses authority. But like, uh, aside from that, there is actually some authority in the knowledge base that humanity is using at the moment, because it can like describe phenomena to a certain degree, right? And then
Right,
and we have experience of it. We have experience of applying it and getting results.
right, right.
And so now here is another body of authoritative knowledge, and we perhaps have yet to understand the authority of it because we have yet to apply it in our life.
Right.
When we apply it in our life, then we can appreciate how it is authoritative, because then it's like, oh, it actually is like this.
Right.
I can just like it's the same principle, right? Now, I think one of the major things that separates the two is that even though our material, our materially based knowledge that we use to navigate this world, it generally gives us the result where we try to search out a different authority, because it doesn't give us the happiness that we're looking for.
I see, I see.
So even though we have so much knowledge, we have so much facility, we have so much technology, we have so much science, we have so much medicine, all these things, there's clearly it's not leading humanity to a state of like ultimate happiness and peace and fulfillment. And so we are naturally trying to seek out a different kind of authority.
Right. And
Yeah.
I would just make pull out the point here that generally for most of us, we accept some authority. Like people will say, oh, well, I don't accept like, authority or whatever. I accept
Right.
science, or whatever, which is, but for most of us, we accept some authority in the sense that, yes, either we accept the scientist, what they say, or the modern kind of or we could accept what the Bhagavatam is saying, or we could accept what this person's saying, or ultimately it comes down to a person again. Since we were talking about that, you know, ultimately we're accepting what some person is saying.
Yeah.
So the Bhagavatam is like, we're accepting what Krishna is saying, as opposed to what, you know, this scientist might be saying, or that.
Yeah.
And it was sorry, it was more on the point of that, you know, we accept some authority, and then based on which authority we accept, we get a particular result. And
yeah.
you're saying that when we accept the scientific authorities, that generally the result is that we are not satisfied, and so we try to seek something else, another, you know, what's this person saying, what's that person, does this work, does that work?
If we see the world and the purpose of life through a scientific lens, like a Western type of Western kind of scientific lens, then uh, that doesn't lead to happiness. It's not that it's not like
It's not that it doesn't work to some
yeah,
extent,
yeah, yeah. Well, it's
but it
just that
doesn't lead.
it's not that the two things aren't in harmony. Like it's not that science can't be also appreciated, and is not. It's not that scientific knowledge is necessarily disjointed from like
it,
knowledge in the Bhagavatam. Actually, there's
it
a
just doesn't cover, it just doesn't cover all aspects of life.
yeah, exactly. It just doesn't cover all aspects of life.
It covers some aspect of reality, but it doesn't cover all aspects of reality, and that's why there's dissatisfaction, is
Yeah.
because it's limited.
And that's where science loses its authority when it tries to pose itself as an answer to all aspects of life.
Right, right, right.
And then the authority is actually diminished there. But but it does come down to the same point about having taking an authority or having faith, because how many of us have access to quantum
Right, right.
physics, or even not even to go that far, like whoever is writing the papers, the scientific theories, and whoever's like doing all of the research, what percentage of humanity have access to, or is participating in that process,
Right.
so it's very much in one sense it's also a descending for like
It is.
we experience it in a descending way.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
for most of us. uh yeah, and so then when we apply the knowledge that's found in the Bhagavatam, then we get a different result. It puts everything like its authority is in fact regarding the purpose of life and the nature of the world uh, in its spiritual and material nature. It's a very like a whole.
Yeah, and that's also a thing too. Like, I mean, in the Bhagavatam specifically, it doesn't go into detail into like the workings of the material world, but
Mhm,
in the body of Vedic knowledge, which the Bhagavatam is like the conclusion, the culmination of all of it, it does touch on all of the things that modern science is exploring.
mhm, mhm.
Like if you, a lot of it's, I think a lot of it's lost now, but it actually does cover all aspects of, you know, what modern science is also looking at. But
Mhm, mhm.
it's also saying, like, the Bhagavatam's the essence that, you know, there is the material aspect of life, but that's not really the, like, you can develop that, you know, and you can develop, you know, big, what, you know, so many material facilities, but that's not really the goal of life. It's not
And the
really like, yeah,
yeah, and the proof is that it doesn't satisfy the heart
yeah,
since time immemorial. Like it's not like a new thing. It's like it's never
yeah.
worked. It's never brought happiness to the heart, complete fulfillment, to just strive to gain through material energy alone. And that was an
Yes,
interest. Yeah,
interesting.
Interesting
Yeah, yeah.
tangent there. I think it came out because this purport, which we have this commentary here, which we haven't really dived into yet, is going to talk about astrology,
Yeah, which is, yeah.
and that's kind of I can't remember exactly how we went down that road, but it
What
was it was it was
because
because
this astrology is study. I mean, it's like studying. It's like taking the astrological influences on a person, when they're born, and how that determines, like, what their mentality is going to be like, and all these things. So it's a subtle. It would be called a subtle science
yes,
in the yeah, and so it deals with the laws of nature, but not really
right,
what we're used
exactly.
to in the modern scientific.
Right. That's how we got there. The
Yeah,
state laws are grossly observed, but the laws of material nature being subtle to our gross understanding cannot be experienced grossly. That's where you stopped and we went
yeah.
on that. Like, yeah, yeah. We still have a little bit of time. You want to
Okay,
go a little further into this?
sure. So
I, j- yeah, go ahead.
as stated in Bhagavad Gita, every action of life produces another reaction, which is binding upon us, and only those who are acting on behalf of Krishna are not bound by reactions. Our actions are judged by the higher authorities, the agents of Krishna, and thus we are awarded bodies according to our activities. The law of nature is so subtle that every part of our body is influenced by the respective stars, and a living being obtains his working body to fulfill his terms of imprisonment by the manipulation of such astronomical influence. A person's destiny is therefore ascertained by the birth time constellation of stars, and a factual horoscope is made by a learned astrologer. It is a great science, and misuse of a science does not make it useless.
Okay, one
Mars,
second. Let's pause there for a sec. That was such a great sentence, eh?
yeah.
That last sentence. Can you read it again?
It is great. It is a great science, and misuse of a science does not make it useless.
Yeah. And there's
You
another
can,
concept that was. Did you want to say anything about that?
it's okay. It's okay.
There's another concept that was introduced there, which I'm not sure if we've talked about yet, but the Vedic knowledge presents our life in a material body as a kind of imprisonment. And the language is kind of heavy, right?
Hmm, hmm.
But it means that um, the soul is kind of being contained within this
Restricted.
restricted. Like, in other words, the soul within our body has far, far more potential and far
Right.
more, uh, I don't know.
The life of the life of the soul is a lot more pleasurable and what's the word? I don't. Anyway, it's a lot more pleasurable than the life of a soul in a material body.
Yeah. So in order to like make it a striking point, and sometimes this happens like in throughout the Bhagavatam, and it's the role of the guru, you could say, that sometimes there has to be some way to separate reality from illusion.
Right.
And in order to get that get that effect of like experiencing that difference, sometimes the examples are that are given are quite stark or quite shocking sometimes, and they're kind of, in order to kind of awaken us up to a reality. And so if we think about imprisonment, we think about somebody in a jail cell, that they're there and they're experiencing life, but they're clearly very restricted.
Right.
Their movement is limited. What they can experience is limited. What they can see, hear, eat, smell, who they can talk to. Their whole life has become constrained. And so that analogy of imprisonment is given to us to try to understand like who we are as spiritual beings compared to who we think we are as a material body. We think we're this
Right.
material body, but the material body is so limited, and it has its own we have many issues living within a material body. And if we can understand or realize how we're not this material body, that we're this spiritual being within, with that doesn't really have the limitations of the material body, and that's kind of like the starting point, right?
It's and that's the dissatisfaction, right? You were mentioning earlier, is that when the spiritual being thinks, identifies with a physical body and tries to get happiness through that, that's the dissatisfaction. Is that it's like, because just you're saying the limitations, like for instance, one limitation, it said, Krishna says in the Gita in the beginning, it's like his first lesson to Arjuna, is that the we every living entity is eternal by nature. There's never a time when we didn't exist. There's never a time where we won't exist. We're eternal. And yet, because we identify with a physical body which has a lifespan, so it's born at some time and it dies at some time. So when we think that, oh, that's me, then there's some suffering that happens there, because
Mm-hmm.
actually by nature we're eternal. And so when we identify with something that's temporary, it's like, death is a very kind of like, what's going on here? Like, we have this sense that things should continue, you
Mm-hmm.
know that like, and but everything's breaking down, and like, this thing's gonna, this vehicle is gonna end, it's gonna. And so it's like, it's a really like, whoa, what's going on,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think, so when yeah, it's the restrictions of the body. And when we identify with that as, just like being in the prison and thinking like, this is the extent of what life can be.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Actually, there's a lot more you could do with your life if you weren't in the prison. And it, yeah.
so if the body is like the cell, then the laws of nature or the modes of nature are the jail, the whole as a whole. What was the sentence here? The state laws are gross. This is the. We'll go back to the sentence again. The
Yeah, yeah.
state laws are grossly observed, but the laws of material nature, being subtle to our gross understanding, cannot be experienced grossly. It means that you don't see the walls of the jail. You don't see them. They're not
Yeah, right.
experienced grossly in that way. They're experienced subtly. And so we're free to go wherever we want in this world, in one sense. But the restrictions of the body, according to how we're being influenced by the laws of nature, there's not really like that's not easy to escape from. It's not an easy jail to escape from. But
This,
see, here's the thing: like this is the path of enlightenment is how to become well to become liberated from these subtle laws that imprison the expression of our personality, our
right,
this is where we started, right? I suppose personality. And this is the restriction. The restriction is that our personality is like, it's like we want to express ourselves in so many ways, in terms of our activity, in terms of our emotions, in terms of our imaginations. Our whole existence seeks expression, and that expression is tightly constrained in a material body. But
right,
then, as we become, um, spiritualized through the process of bhakti, then those restraints in how our personality can be expressed become reduced. And in bhakti, we find the ultimate expression. The soul finds its release finally, to be able to express and engage, even though we're in a material body. That's the powerful thing about bhakti, is that
right.
we can even learn to use the material facilities we have, including our body, for that full spiritual expression, and it brings us great joy and happiness. And that's the
Right.
beauty of the practices of bhakti.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Anything to add to that?
I was still dwelling on the prison.
Pretty stark, it's
It's
pretty
just
shocking.
you brought it to a positive place. I'm still
I think that's a good place to
yeah.
end on. Yeah. So I don't know. Any last thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, that's good. That's good. I mean, yeah, there's every time we read another section, it's like there's not something more to dig into.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We could do it all day. All right. So maybe next time we'll just kind of pick up. There's a lot in this commentary, so maybe we can even start
It's
on the
very,
commentary
yeah,
next
and
time.
it's very interesting because
Yeah.
these are things that not most of us, I would say, in the Western world are not like so aware of, because these are things like in the Bhagavatam and in this body of knowledge, you become exposed to things like it talks about the spiritual reality, which is not something that you necessarily hear much about in our current kind of like body of knowledge that we deal with. So that's one thing that's interesting. But it also talks about aspects of the world in which we live currently that we also, it's not within our current body of knowledge, and so it's also kind of fascinating to hear these things. And I mean, that's definitely what we're talking about in this commentary here.
Yeah.
So
The Bhagavatam is stellar.